Here's something that doesn't make sense. People set goals all the time. They write them down, they think about them, they tell their friends about them, and then nothing happens. The goal sits there like a piece of furniture in a room nobody uses. What's going on? The answer isn't what most people think. It's not about willpower. It's not about wanting it badly enough. The real problem is that goals and actions live in different worlds, and most people never build the bridge between them. Think about what a goal actually is. It's a description of a future state. I want to learn physics. I want to write a book. I want to be in better shape. These are descriptions, nothing more. And here's the peculiar thing. The brain doesn't know what to do with descriptions. The brain works with actions, with sequences, with patterns of behavior that can be executed right now. When someone says, "I want to learn physics," they're holding a photograph of a destination. But there's no map, there's no sequence of steps. There's just this image of being somewhere other than where they are. And then they wonder why they're not making progress. This confusion runs deeper than most people realize. Goals feel productive. Writing them down feels like you're doing something. Thinking about them creates a little burst of satisfaction, almost as if the future you've imagined is already starting to become real. But that feeling is a trick. The brain can't tell the difference between imagining something vividly and actually doing it, not completely. So you get a small reward from just thinking about the goal, which actually reduces the motivation to pursue it. What you need instead is something entirely different. Not goals, but systems. And the difference between these two things is fundamental. A system is a repeating pattern of behavior that exists in time. It's not a destination, it's a process that happens on a schedule. Every Monday and Thursday at 7 in the morning, you sit down with your physics textbook for 1 hour. That's a system. It has a time, a place, a specific action, and a trigger that sets it in motion. The system doesn't care about the distant future. It only cares about what happens next Monday at 7. Here's why this matters. The brain is extraordinarily good at learning patterns and executing them automatically. Give it a consistent sequence, same time, same place, same action, and after a few repetitions, the system starts running itself. You don't have to decide whether to study physics on Monday morning. The decision was made when you designed the system. Monday morning arrives and the behavior unfolds. This is how we actually do things in the world. Not through constant acts of will, but through the construction of reliable machinery that operates whether we feel like it or not. Now, building these systems requires understanding something specific about how behavior works. Every action has 3 components: a cue, a routine, and a consequence. The cue triggers the behavior, the routine is the behavior itself, and the consequence determines whether the behavior will be repeated. Most people ignore the cue entirely. They think if they just remember to do something, they'll do it. But memory is unreliable, especially when you're busy or tired. What you need is an external trigger, something in the environment that automatically prompts the action. The most powerful cues are time and place. This is why scheduling matters. Not because time is magical, but because a clock is a reliable external signal. 7 o'clock Monday morning happens whether you think about it or not. The clock hand arrives at the right position, and that physical fact in the world can trigger your behavior. Place works the same way. If you always study at the same desk, in the same chair, that location becomes associated with the activity. You sit down, and the brain says, "Oh, this is where we do physics problems." The behavior becomes attached to the space. This is why people who exercise at the same gym, at the same time, have much better success than people who say, "I'll exercise when I have time." When you have time is not a cue, it's a wish. 7 o'clock at the gym on Tuesday, that's a cue. The routine itself needs to be specific and small. This is where most systems fail. People design routines that are too ambitious. I'm going to study physics for 3 hours every day. That sounds impressive, but it's probably unsustainable. What happens when you're tired? When something unexpected comes up? The system breaks, and once it breaks, it's hard to restart. Better to design a routine that's almost too easy. 15 minutes, 20 minutes. Something you could do even on your worst day. The consistency matters more than the duration. Do 15 minutes every single day, and in a month you've accumulated 7.5 hours. Miss 3 days, and you've started the process of abandoning the system entirely. There's a principle here that's worth understanding. Small actions, repeated consistently, compound over time in ways that large, sporadic efforts do not. If you write 1 page every day, you have a manuscript in a year. If you wait for inspiration and then write 20 pages, you'll probably wait forever. The brain learns from repetition. Every time you execute the behavior, you're strengthening the neural pathways that make that behavior easier to execute next time. This is physical. Neurons that fire together wire together. The more you repeat the pattern, the more automatic it becomes, until eventually the behavior requires almost no conscious effort at all. But here's something subtle. The consequence of the behavior needs to be immediately reinforcing, at least a little bit. This is tricky because most meaningful goals have their payoff far in the future. Learning physics takes years. Writing a book takes months. The benefits aren't immediate, so you need to engineer immediate consequences. The simplest way is to track the behavior itself. Keep a calendar. Mark an X on every day you execute the system. After a few weeks, you'll have a chain of X's, and there's something satisfying about not breaking that chain. The chain becomes its own reward. Some people use a physical object, move a marble from one jar to another every time you complete the routine. Some people use a simple notebook where they write 1 sentence about what they did. The specific method doesn't matter. What matters is that there's a small, immediate reinforcement that says, you did the thing. This creates a feedback loop. The cue triggers the routine produces the consequence, and the consequence makes you more likely to respond to the cue next time. After enough repetitions, the entire sequence becomes automatic. You no longer need willpower. The system runs itself. Now, there's a deeper principle underneath all of this. Goals are about outcomes, but outcomes are not directly controllable. You can't decide to have learned physics. You can't decide to have written a book. These things are emergent properties of thousands of small actions accumulated over time. What you can control is your behavior in this moment. Right now, you can decide to open a textbook. You can decide to write a paragraph. You can decide to do 20 push-ups. The immediate action is always within your power. Systems shift your attention from outcomes to processes. Instead of asking, have I achieved the goal? You ask, did I execute the system today? And that second question has a clear, immediate answer. Either you did it or you didn't. There's no ambiguity, no waiting around for future results. This changes the psychology completely. With goals, you're always measuring yourself against something you haven't accomplished yet. You're always falling short until the moment you succeed, and that moment might be months or years away. With systems, you succeed every single day you execute the behavior. The success is immediate and tangible. This isn't just philosophical. It affects motivation in a concrete way. The brain releases dopamine not when you achieve distant goals, but when you make progress toward them. Every time you execute your system, you're creating a small win, and small wins produce the neurochemical reward that keeps you going. There's another aspect to this that's worth thinking about. Systems free up mental resources that goals consume. When you have a goal, part of your mind is constantly monitoring your progress, worrying about whether you're doing enough, feeling anxious about the gap between where you are and where you want to be. This monitoring takes energy. With a system, there's nothing to monitor except whether you did today's routine. Either you studied physics for 20 minutes this morning, or you didn't. That's it. No need to calculate how many more years of study you need. No need to compare yourself to others. No need to worry about the ultimate outcome. Just execute the system and move on with your day. This mental simplification is powerful. It reduces decision fatigue. It eliminates the constant internal debate about whether to do the thing. Monday at 7, you study physics. There's no decision to make. But let's be clear about something. Systems aren't magic. Building a system takes thought and planning. You need to understand your own patterns. When do you have consistent time available? Where can you work without interruption? What cues already exist in your environment that you can leverage? Some people are naturally structured. They wake up at the same time every day. eat at the same time, follow predictable routines. For these people, adding a new system is relatively straightforward. Find a slot in the existing pattern and insert the new behavior. Other people have lives that are more chaotic. Different schedule every day, unexpected demands, lots of interruptions. For these people, building systems is harder, but even more important. You need to find the stable points, the times or places that are reliably available, and build your systems around those anchor points. Maybe you can't control when you wake up, but you always eat lunch. Okay, the 15 minutes after lunch is when you read. Maybe your evenings are unpredictable, but you always commute home from work. Use that time. The specific implementation doesn't matter. What matters is finding the reliable patterns in your life and attaching new behaviors to them. There's also the question of multiple systems. Can you maintain several at once? The answer is yes, but with a caveat. Each system requires a certain amount of mental overhead until it becomes automatic. If you try to install 5 new behaviors simultaneously, you'll probably fail at all of them. Better to build systems sequentially. Start with one. Execute it consistently for several weeks until it becomes automatic. Then add another. The first system is now running on autopilot, so you have mental resources available to establish the second one. Build your life this way, one system at a time, and after a year or two, you'll have a collection of automated behaviors that produce enormous cumulative results. Here's where this gets interesting. Once you have several systems running, they start to interact. The system where you exercise every morning gives you more energy, which makes the system where you study in the evening easier to maintain. The system where you read for 20 minutes before bed improves your thinking, which makes your work system more effective. This is compound interest, but for behavior. Each system produces benefits that amplify the effects of your other systems. The whole becomes greater than the sum of its parts. And there's something else. Systems create identity. When you execute a behavior consistently, you start to see yourself as the kind of person who does that thing. You're not someone who wants to learn physics. You're someone who studies physics every Monday and Thursday morning. That's who you are. This identity shift is subtle but profound. Identity shapes behavior more powerfully than goals ever could. Now, what about the goals themselves? Should you abandon them entirely? Not exactly. Goals are useful as direction indicators. They tell you which systems to build. If your goal is to learn physics, that suggests building a system around regular study. If your goal is to write a book, that suggests building a system around daily writing. The goal provides direction, but the system provides movement. You need both. The mistake is focusing on the goal at the expense of the system, or worse, thinking that setting the goal is itself an accomplishment. There's a final piece to this that ties everything together. Systems work because they align with how the brain actually operates. The brain is not a rational planning engine. It's a pattern-matching machine that learns from repetition and responds to cues in the environment. When you try to achieve goals through willpower and decision-making, you're fighting against the brain's natural operating system. You're trying to consciously control every action, every day, forever. That's exhausting, and it doesn't work for long. When you build systems, you're working with the brain's natural machinery. You're installing patterns that become automatic. You're using external cues to trigger behavior instead of relying on memory and will. You're creating immediate feedback loops that reinforce the behavior. You're doing what the brain is already designed to do. This is why systems work when goals fail. Not because systems are more powerful, but because they're compatible with the way behavior actually operates in the physical machinery of the brain. So here's what you do. Take the goal that's been sitting in your mind like unused furniture. Ask yourself, what specific behavior, repeated regularly, would move me toward this? What time and place could I attach this behavior to? What cue would trigger it reliably? How can I make the behavior small enough that I could do it on my worst day? Design the system. Write it down. Be specific. Not I'll study more, but every Monday and Thursday at 7 a.m., I sit at my kitchen table with my physics textbook for 20 minutes. Then execute it. Do it once. Then do it again. Then keep doing it until you don't have to think about it anymore. Until Monday morning arrives and you're at the kitchen table with the textbook before you've fully woken up. That's when you know the system is working. Build systems like this, one at a time, and something remarkable happens. The life you wanted to live, the one you described with your goals, starts to emerge naturally from the systems you've built. Not because you forced it into existence, but because you constructed reliable machinery that generates the right behaviors automatically. The future you imagined wasn't wrong. You just needed to understand that futures aren't destinations you arrive at. They're patterns of behavior extended through time. Build the right patterns, and the future builds itself. If this made you think differently about how to approach what you want to accomplish, hit subscribe. There's more to explore about how thinking clearly changes everything.